As you continue to play the Yu-Gi-Oh card game more and more and get more into the competitive side of things, there are some decks that you try that leave you underwhelmed or angry because they lack their oomph or resilience when put up against decks that could be considered rudimentary by every standard. And it seems to be that sometimes decks just aren't cut out for the modern metagame. Sometimes you give up and move on, but there are some times where you move on, come back to the deck once you have some more high-profile engines or even other decks under your belt. This is one of those times for me, and as much as I like this deck, it is one of the weakest decks in the Visa Starfrost lore, but it is certainly my favourite to play. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Scareclaw.
In this world, gotta make your own way. One is all in this world. Like it's just a game you play. Never fear no fall when you leave without a net you'll find.
Scareclaw is the first archetype in the Visa Starfrost lore, and it was released in Dimension Force on the 18th of May of 2022. A link-based deck that would take a page out of Super Heavy Samurai's book and would work around the mechanic of being in defense position and buffing the Link 3 through doing so, Scareclaw Tryhard. This would be the underdog archetype of the set alongside Libromancer, which unfortunately would go unnoticed until the release of Power of the Elements in August of the same year, where they would release their own Salamangreat Phalanx for the archetype in the form of Scareclaw Lightheart. But considering this was Power of the Elements, this was immediately overshadowed by Sprite and Tearlament, and this sort of, well, never-ending loop or theme or whatever would go on for a while. Even when Ishizu Tearlament got hit and then Kashtira came into the picture in Photon Hypernova. It seemed to be a vicious cycle that the deck couldn't escape, just being mediocre at best. However, despite being overshadowed a lot, the previously mentioned Kashtira stuff gave the deck some much needed support, but not enough to really push it into seriously contending in any meta it was a part of. And then comes Cyberstorm Access, giving us the next archetype in the Vsauce lore, Vanadium, which is where Scareclaw finally got its light, in the form of a 7-card-ish engine that literally just makes Baron and Vicious Stroud. And unfortunately, that's all the deck really has going for it. Being the weakest of the 4 lore archetypes, it does leave a lot to be desired, but it also makes it so much fun to play and win with, like we actually have been seeing across the world now, that the deck has some extra power to it, in addition to people now understanding it more. And that leads us to what we're doing today. I hold this deck near and dear to my heart when it comes to lore-based decks, and as much as it is one of the weakest decks in terms of its lore and what it does as a deck, it is probably still one of the better and more favourite decks for me to play if I want to do something that's a little bit out there. Going on to what we are going to be doing for this, well, deck, is that I recently took to the Facebook page of Scareclaw, of Scareclaw Duelists, and asked them what were the main variants of, well, Scareclaw itself as the deck. And I seem to get 4 recurring answers. Pure, which is a more balanced version, I would say. I don't think balance is the right word, but more integrated version of the deck itself, and where it mainly relies on a shit ton of hand traps, board breakers, or the Brave Engine. Then we had Kashtira, that even though that this deck did get hit, as of me recording this, Unicorns 2, Diabolos is banned, a Rise Heart to 1, the deck seems to do a lot even without just generic support. So that's another version. We have one that I don't hear all too much about, which is Tri-Brigade Scareclaw, obviously, and I would kind of see the links. There are Beast Warrior, Wing Beasts, and all that sort of stuff. And then we have the one of which I did kind of just talk about in the previous segment, Vanadium. The latter two, Vanadium and Tri-Brigade, we're going to be steering away from now, because as previously mentioned, Vanadium just uses Scareclaw as a 7-ish card engine. I might be wrong, but it just uses more of an engine and less of a deck. I tried playing it, it doesn't unfortunately work all that well, it's a bit clunky. And we're going to be rolling out Tri-Brigade because, well, that deck isn't very fun to me. I don't like playing Tri-Brigade, I don't like playing against it, it's just kind of a deck that I'm not particularly a fan of. So that leaves us with two options. It leaves us with the Brave or Brave/Pure version of the deck and Kashtira. I think I have an idea of what I'm going to do for this starting version of the deck. And, well, this is what we're thinking on. I currently don't have 2 cards in, which we will see later, but let us just start with the main deck. And this is where you might notice things that are immediately a little bit different than what you would expect if you're playing pure Scareclaw. We're going to be playing 2 Astra, 3 Acro, which a lot of people to a lot of people is the Scareclaw monster that you cut down to at least like 2, maybe even 1 if you're playing some variants. But I feel like this card is incredibly underrated, especially with its just attack gain, and it can make Tryhard even bigger than it's already intended to be. Then obviously we have 2 Scareclaw Rykart, the main normal summon of the deck, and the main just bridge between the 2 decks, or between the 2 archetypes in the deck, I would suppose. Well, more so than this next card. We have 2 Scareclaw Kashtira. This card is just very, very good, especially for walling off monsters that actually need effects or just that little bit too small to just work around what you're trying to do. Then we have 2 Scareclaw Balloon. Balloon as a card is incredibly good. I like using it, but it's the one that comes up the least. And then obviously we are playing 1 Vsauce Starfrost. I'm so used to saying Vsauce Micah with a couple of friends. But as you can tell, if we are playing Vsauce Starfrost itself in its deck, there is going to be a Synchro in our extra deck in the near future. And if you guys know this deck, you definitely know what it's going to be. To continue on the Scareclaw stuff, we have 3 Arrival. You kind of need to play 3 of this. It's a searchable monster reborn that's not actually once per turn, and the only effect that is once per turn is the protection effect, which I actually didn't know. Then we have 2 Primitive Planet Rykophobia. This card is alright in the sense that you can do some things with it, because, well, searching it every now and again is very, very helpful. But I never have found the need to play a 3rd. And then finally we have the last Scareclaw card of this entire main deck, and that is Scareclaw Defanging. This card is an incredibly powerful card because it stops you from targeting Scareclaw Link monsters, becomes a pop, and it's just incredibly good to just kind of give your monsters that little bit extra protection when they need it. And now you're gonna see what a lot of people expected me to play. And ironically enough, I'm excited to play it. We are going to be starting with 2 Kashtira Fenrir. Obviously, you know what Fenrir does. Special summon it, it's a Pancratops-like monster, and so on and so forth. It's one of those monsters that we are technically meant to play 3 of if you play Pure, and 1 Raitsoth, but as you can tell by these next 2 cards, 2 Kashtira Unicorn. This card was was unlimited and is now semi-limited, which is a bit of a slap on the wrist when it comes to trying to hit Kashtira in some way, shape or form. It just doesn't really work. Then we have 1 Kashtira Rise Heart. This card is just a 1 card of Rise Heart when we eventually get to it. It's one of those cards where it is incredibly good, and it's one of those things where it can, for whatever reason, if you really wanted it to be, it can be a level 4 for the level 10, well, Synchro replay. Shut up, Discord, I don't need your shit. Then we have 2 Kashtira Birth. Obviously, this card is needed every now and again, especially when you're trying to special summon stuff back. A card I am kind of off and on about when it comes to how we are going to play this deck. That's Kashtira Theosis. I'm very well aware of what this card does in Kashtira itself, because I have played a little bit here and there, but I'm unsure on how I'm playing it in this deck, whether it be a bridge to extra Kashtira monsters, or if it's just a way for me to get an extra body and then have some extra effects. I'm unsure, but the Xyz lock does worry me a little bit, so we'll probably get to figuring that out at some point. And then obviously we are playing the one Pressure Planet Rates Off. Even in pure, when you play 3 Fenrir and 1 Terraforming, 1 Rates Off, this is kind of the standard. And obviously, as you can tell, we are leaning more into Scareclaw than we are into Kashtira, which is obviously the whole point in us playing, well, a Scareclaw deck. You don't want to be playing a Kashtira deck with Scareclaw engine. It's not worth it. And then we have, well, some weird ratios, I would suppose. 2 Water Enchantress. In this deck, we are not primarily using the Brave Engine as a means of interruption. More of just, well, we are, but more of just a extra bit of resilience when we decide to go first and we've sided out our Kashtira stuff. Then obviously we're going to go for the rest of it. 1 Wandering Griffin Rider, the now playset of Rite of Aramasir. This card is obviously expensive. I got my final one very, very recently. Then Fateful, Dracoback. Standard adventure stuff. I'm not going to go over it. I went over it a lot more in the Marincess video that I made last month. However, we are going to just simply move on. Then obviously, there's a lot going on in this format. So currently we have 3 Ash. It doesn't quite do as much as it probably should do, but it's a card that is ubiquitous in, well, how it plays throughout the entire game. 1 Called By, hand trap sort of thing, as I've literally just said. Terraforming to find the Pressure Planet, because it's not a Kashtira card for some fucking reason. Then we have 3 Imperm. Obviously, 3 Imperm is an incredibly good card. Imperm is just fun to use. It's good going first and going second. And well, yeah, so that makes this a 43 or 44 card deck. I will put it up on the screen for you guys right now, or whenever I can. And now, extra deck time. And now we are getting into the extra deck, where this deck has its life and soul, I would suppose you could say. We have 3 Scareclaw Lightheart. This card is incredibly good just in general when you're coming to get into your combos, or even trying to use it as a means to summon out Visa Starfrost if you can't get to it already. Then obviously, to ironically enough finish off already the Scareclaw monsters, that's 3 Scareclaw Tryheart. Tryheart as a card is incredibly ubiquitous, as it's very good at what it does. It gains you advantage. It's a massive towers that you otherwise can't particularly get into or get over. So then for our last link we have Borrelsword Dragon. I would be playing Access Code if I had it, and then the card to add out big fucking towers, Underworld Goddess. Underworld Goddess as a card is just amazing. I like using it. It's so fun to use. Then the 2 current proxies in the deck, which is 2 Kashtira Shangri-Ira. I actually don't own any copies of this, which is rather funny. Yeah, Kashtira is one of those, well, archetypes that you just, ironically enough, don't really think about it too much until you get to such a point where you are going into playing the game and, well, just possibly getting like 4 or 5 zones locked. Then the card that was newly put to 1, Kashtira Ariser. This card kind of deserved more than 1, but like playing it at 1 is perfectly fine. It's perfectly alright. It's just, especially with how pure Kashtira was so oppressive in comparison to what other decks did at the time. It's one of those things like, okay, it got hit, that's all we needed. Then obviously another generic rank 7 in Mecha Phantom is Dracosack. There is probably another or other better generic rank 7s for me to use, but this is the one I currently just have on hand at the moment. It's an Xyz deck, you gotta play this. Skyfather is certainly a good just a board wipe if you manage to get to like attacking with a Riseheart or Dracosack or literally anyone. Then we have to play it because we're playing True Note. We're playing Baron de Fleur. Baron is one of those cards that is just very, very good. It's ironically enough, it's cheaper than it's ever been. I believe it's like £50-60. It's probably the best price it has ever been. Then the final card in our extra deck is a card you don't really think to play in Scareclaw more than anything until you actually read it. That's one Vicious Astrolaud, or as I'm going to call it throughout this entire video, Vicious Astrolaud. It is one of those cards that is just a big, beefy motherfucker, and then it just gains even more attack. And I believe that the effect to gain attack is, by all accounts, not once per turn. But like, if you can summon more than one copy, abso-fucking-lutely, it's really, really good. I'm probably gonna need to read it a couple more times. Yeah, it's not once per turn, which is actually kind of crazy in all honesty. So yeah, that is the extra deck for this deck. And well, since I don't know a lot about how to side for this deck, we're just gonna go over what I feel like is the start. And we are going to start with probably two cards that I didn't think to cut originally, or side for that matter. And that's Scareclaw Twinsaw and Scareclaw Splash. Both cards are incredibly good in their own right for interruptions, and well, being searchable is always fun. But because they're traps, it's a little bit slower to play them, and in a lot of instances, Splash or Twinsaw's second effect, or more Twinsaw's second effect, less Splashes, are not really used that much. Now going into just generic stuff, we are still in a format where we add a lot, so well, 3 John Lockbird's always handy. This card's incredibly good, incredibly oppressive. As someone who plays super heavy, I hate this card with a burning passion. So we have also, if we choose to go second, we have Dark Ruler No More. Well, obviously this card has kind of fallen in and out of formats, as it always does. It's one of those things where sometimes you have to, sometimes you have to play them, sometimes you don't. And obviously, back row decks, Duster, we have other pieces of removal in the deck, Vicious Astrolaud, Lycophobia, Baron, and just a lot of good cards. Then, because obviously Engage is now at 2, it's one of the cards that everyone dreads coming back. I'm going to be playing Striker at least a little bit this format if it doesn't get fucked by then. That's 3 anti-spell flickers. This card's going to be everywhere. You guys know what it does. I know what it does. It's incredibly oppressive, and it fucking sucks to play. Going back to the whole going second agenda, if we happen to go second at all, 3 Evenly Match is still incredibly strong in this format. Even though Super Heavy does set up a million fucking negates, its consistency is heavily weakened, and well, we can probably play through this with no problems nowadays. And with the deck profile out of the way, I'm going to quickly talk about what I already know about this deck, because obviously in this series I sometimes know the decks I'm playing. So Scareclaw as a deck I know very well. I know the pure variant, know how to play it, know what it does, this, that, and a little bit more. It's how the deck has shaped up to be something different. How it's shaped up to be one of the few archetypes that actually make use of Kashtira more as an engine, except when it's just not 3 Fenrir, and more as a just generic workaround with the lore, I would suppose. But when it started to get a little bit more heavy on Kashtira, when I was building the deck, I was like, I want to try and take it back a little bit, and I'm still on and off about the Theosis being in the deck, if it is in there. But where it comes as a surprise to me is figuring out the combos to this version of the deck, because I haven't played Scareclaw since pre-Power of the Elements, and even then I did play it after a little bit when the Trap Deck structure came out, but I didn't work with it all that much because Raigeki is a card, and unfortunately I got murked by it quite a few times. But anyway, so now we are back with fresh eyes, as I had said previously. We're back with fresh eyes, fresh coat of paint, more expensive card that I have spent too much money on. But we are going to be figuring out how this deck works in some testing. And unfortunately, there is no like local segment for the first week because, well, I don't have a locals this week. I'm at work. Fun. And with that, we are back home from testing and my weekly Edison tournament. Ooh. There we go. It's a bit wonky on my side. But we are back from my weekly Edison tournament, as well as the testing I said we were going to do. And I wanted to quickly talk about what this deck did today. And what it did was do well. Surprisingly enough, that the first build I had made, even with all the seemingly unknowing kinks about the deck, seemed to work very, very well. And I was enjoying playing it a lot, and well, I was fucking stupid and forgot to take my other Kashtira Fenrir out of Super Heavy Samurai. I'm a fucking moron. But anyway, it's one of the days where I just had a lot of fun testing. The deck did really well. I really enjoyed playing it. But there are some things I do need to figure out with the deck. Hand traps. I need to figure out what hand traps are good going forward, because Droll doesn't seem to do a lot against most decks now because they seem to special summon apart from Super Heavy. Shifter I can't particularly play because it will fuck up my game plan. And well, Gamma is now at 1. Thank you, Konami. You can go fuck yourself. So I need to figure those out. And 2, Labyrinth seems to be just a generic force against Scareclaw and this version of the deck in particular, because there are so many different types in the deck. So like, because they can play a lot of Floodgates, they play Rivalry, Goes a Match, Karma Cannon. It's just constant mass interruption that they can either search or they can get access to very easily. So I struggled to get against that a bit, so I might be playing some back row removal in the very near future. However, the deck did do incredibly well against Gold Pride Punk, especially when I played it today. It was one of those decks that I seem to struggle with Super Heavy, but this deck doesn't seem to struggle with, so maybe just a tit for tat sort of thing. So, going forward, I need to do some testing on what spell and trap removal is good for the deck, as well as just how the deck interacts with Towers type monsters. So maybe certain Kaijus, Kurakara, Lava Golem maybe. It depends on what this deck feels like it needs. So yeah, let's do some brainstorming. Why are we M-penning? I don't wanna. Why did you put your hand? Cut mad.
Summon Rubinda effect.
No. I've now got a hand that just plays around this. Oh, which is hilarious.
So just no normal summon. No.
Let's go. I put the Prime Effect. Yay! That's more than one card. Okay. No! Let's go. Add Defang. I will shuffle card and let you draw a card. Or let me draw a card. Words.
Okay, this flips to a Menarche 2/2.
Thanks!
And then this flips into whenever this attacks, destroy target after I enter open up player.
Actually, what's your Tetris?
Oh no.
Everything essentially.
I think about it. Let's go.
Even
Special Scareclaw Kashtira. Banish Unicorn hand.
uniform.
No, it's not. Because I'm autistic, I'm not going to lie to you. I suffer from autism, so there's...
I do play this card.
I'm just, I would appreciate a little bit of help, basically. Well, that's basically what I'm asking. And, you know, obviously I don't get paid till Friday.
It is really fucking hot today. But, ladies and gentlemen, we are into the second week of the Source, Scareclaw edition. And now we are going to start making some changes to the current version of the deck. Shut up. Shush. Making some current changes to the deck that we have going. After doing some research, after doing some research from a couple of people who know the deck better than I do, I have found out some source about Scareclaw just as a deck, and I'm kind of excited to play it. So let me explain to you what I'm going to be doing. Right, jeez, fucking Christ, that sounds bright. Anyway, so what our version of the deck currently does is currently plays all three engines of Kashtira, Scareclaw, and Adventurer at what could be perceived as their maximum. So obviously, our current ratios will be up on the screen and so on and so forth. I apologise about the cards. So, what would most likely be happening is that we're going to cut down on our cash engine at least a little bit.
And when I say a little bit, I mean quite a bit. We're going to be stripping down the engine to 3 Fenrir and 2 Cash Planet, which in a lot of instances could just be now perceived as a pure Scareclaw deck, which it kind of more is. It's more of a Scareclaw deck than anything else now, which is good for me because I wanted to test out, see what it was like for other places or for other versions of the deck at some point. So we've done that, and now we've also swapped our ratios for Enchantress and Rite of Aramasir. So we're playing 3 Enchantress, 2 Rite, and not the other way around. And now we're gonna probably focus a little bit more on the Scareclaw side of things and how things are supposed to go. So we've taken out Kashtira Arise Heart for the time being because, well, the card is good, but it does fuck up a lot of the game plan of what Scareclaw does. So I've taken that out and taken out the second copy of Shangri-Era. But what we're going to be doing is replacing those 2 cards with obviously one you guys know quite well if you happen to play Scareclaw, which is IP Masquerena. You can make Triheart or Appaloosa or Nightmare Unicorn in your opponent's turn, which is always nice. And the next card, which I didn't expect to be playing, is Cherubini Ebon of the Angel Abyss, or I can't word. So Cherubini, which is the Link 2 monster for level 3s. It turns out that there is a way to link your Kashtira plays with Kashtira Fenrir and Kashtira Scareclaw into your adventure engine through Cherubini sending Water Enchantress as it's cast to target itself for its own effect. Let's explain what the fuck I was on about. We need 2 cards for this combo. We need a Kashtira Fenrir and a Scareclaw card specifically. So, this is how it goes. We're going to assume we are going first. We're going to special summon Fenrir for its own effect and activate it, getting us a Kashtira Scareclaw, of which we will then special summon to our side of the field by banishing the Scareclaw or Kashtira card we have in our hand. And now we are going to overlay using the Scareclaw Kashtira and the Kashtira Fenrir into Mecha Phantom Beast Dracosac. Dracosac has an effect that's actually imperative to this part of the combo, of which we will detach 1 material from said Mecha Phantom Beast Dracosac, making 2 Mecha Phantom Beast tokens. What we need to remember about this part of the combo is that these 2 tokens that we have created off of Mecha Phantom Beast Dracosac are level 3. And these level 3 tokens are what we use to make this next card, which is why I've said brings this whole combo together, Cherubini Ebon Angel of the Burning Abyss. Cherubini has an effect that we're going to activate, targeting itself to send as cost a level 3 monster from deck to grave. So we're going to send Water Enchantress, which then allows us to target Cherubini, and it gains its attack of the monster we sent. We don't technically need to resolve Cherubini's effect, we just need to be able to activate it. So we can even activate this card under Skill Drain, which is incredibly strong because we only need it to send for its cost. So after that, you are literally free to do whatever you'd like, but a lot of the way our people would finish off this is just going through our adventure lines by banishing the Enchantress from Graveyard, getting the right, and so on and so forth. Which I think is kind of nice because a lot of the way you play Scareclaw is through level 3s and through Link climbing, which I always find is kind of fun. So yeah, that's what we're currently going to be working towards, at least this week. It's fine. I'm just gonna record this as like a long shot.
Look at that business. Yeah, so that's what you've been doing.
So obviously start let's
go. Activate Rite of Aramasir.
To activate the card for the month or the year or whatever.
Switch for the token.
Like the dice that I got They haven't got them in the store, so they get them soon. So, yeah.
Activate planet.
It's like +1/+1, and it flips to a +2/+2/3/3. Counter.
I need those dice. I get so confused.
Yeah, but don't worry, the store's going to get them soon.
So
So,
we're using them.
Have you, wait, have you always been playing Thrust?
No, I've just
PSA8,
decided I haven't done.
Blue Eyes Ghost.
ooh, okay.
That was nice.
Yeah, that's pretty. That is.
Yeah.
It's the red eyes, the blue eyes is, and the.
Set one?
Well, I mean,
2 junk speed up.
Exactly.
Literally a level 2 junk speed up. It was on the draw.
Fact. Range.
Well, Andrew, you can count. That's alright.
I was just going to grab some chocolate there, and then I looked at the minstrels, and then I completely forget that they're laxatives to me. Like, they go through me like...
That's alright.
It's not even fun. No other chocolate does it to me.
Can you eat all galaxies?
No, anything
they will.
galaxy.
With life unfortunately getting in the way of a lot of things, I haven't been able to do a locals for this episode of The Source for literally at all. Normally I would have had a locals recap either in the last segment or even like what would be this segment, but unfortunately life is getting in the way quite a lot. So I took to the online community for Yu-Gi-Oh! And decided in my infinite wisdom to see what I could do online when I wasn't at work or if I wasn't busy with real life stuff. And I happened to come across the boy himself, or the man, the myth, the legend, mcole40 on Zodiac Duelist. While I was scrolling through the Facebook page, I happened to see that he was hosting a free online dueling book tournament that would happen over the last week or so of this month. So you know what I was gonna do, and what I have done, I've entered, and I have decided in my infinite wisdom to obviously take this week's deck, take Scareclaw for this tournament. And this is going to be where we put Scareclaw to the test, and it's going to be one of those things where we need to sit down and figure out what we need to do for this tournament. And before I preface this over anything else, this tournament is a little bit different than what you would normally be put into this sort of tournament. We have the TCG ban list, so what recently got banned like Diabolosis, Super Heavy Samurai, Scarecrow, Cyberstein, a Point of the Red Lotus and all that. But we have all of the OCG cards. So we have all stuff that's just come out. So like as I'm recording this, Battle of Legends, Monstrous Revenge came out in the TCG yesterday. So we have now legal access to Assault Synchron for Adventure Synchron, but we also have access to Crimson Dragon, Scrap Iron Idol for that deck, and we also have the Chimera Illusionist support that comes out in Duelist Nexus, and we also have this the new Pendulum stuff that comes out in Age of Overlord. So yeah, we need to figure out a lot for this deck. Let's do some changes, shall we? For this tournament and the bigger variety of decks that we do know and that we don't know, I'm going to be making some changes that I feel like personally were either a long time coming to the deck or a sudden thought that has been doing really well in theory and in some testing that I've been doing enough. To start with, one of the main monsters that I've been wanted to put in for a long time, that is Link Spider. This card is incredible to play under really awkward situations where we have Adventure Engine pre-established, allowing for access to Tryheart in wonky and non-favourable game states, as it's now an effect monster which Tryheart does require 3 of to be made. We took out the third Lightheart as, well, we simply never make it and only play 2 of the Scareclaw field spell anyway. And the second effect, a special summon itself back while I control a Visa Starfrost, is certainly useless on the second and third copy of the card. The other change I decided to make is the Blackluster Soldier Link through. This card is incredibly good and definitely an amazing alternative to Tryheart when we're trying to play under Ghost Match or Tikaboo, which the latter coming into the format quite a lot with Vanquish Soul rising in popularity and its community labbing the deck like mad left, right and centre. If for whatever reason I do go through all 3 of my Tryharts in a very, very long game, this is definitely a good backup plan, and considering I can make this with Fenrir, Scareclaw Kashtira, Wandering Griffin Rider, and the next card I'm about to show you, it's definitely going to be one of those things that's going to be very, very helpful for our game plan moving forward. Right, the side deck. I've been playing with 14 cards in the side deck for the last 3 weeks. what the fuck am I doing? Truth be told, a lot of one-offs I could play are either blowout cards like Pankratops or Hyper's Feather Duster or Extra Engine, neither of which are very helpful singly. So why not combine the two? I decided to make my 15th card for my extra deck an Illegal Knight. This card is a sort of hidden gem for the Brave Engine, as it normally gets played in the place of Wandering Griffin Rider if you set up enough negates already, like super heavy, almost pendulum strategies if they even play the Adventure Engine. And well, acting as another level 7 to get us into extra rank 7 plays, even though we don't really focus on that, as well as being a double bounce. Fucking yes, please, I would like that a lot. Also, quick side note, as you can see on the screen, I did actually manage to acquire an IP Masquerena through one of my mates at locals that was kind enough to just give it to me, considering the fact that this is the one that came out in Battle of Legends Monsters Revenge, which was actually just released yesterday. So yeah, that's another card I forgot to talk about because I wrote the script fucking ages ago. And that's everything for the changes to this deck. As you can see on screen, this is the entire deck profile of what we're going to be taking for this tournament and this final challenge of the video. So yeah, looks like we've got some fucking sauce on our hands, boys. Let's jump into round 1. So, there were 60 people in this online tournament, so there's going to be quite a few rounds, I believe like 5 or 6, so like a regional level event. So we're going to be here for a while, boys and girls. So sit down or sit back, relax, get some food or get some drink or whatever, and let me tell you how I either did the fucking or got fucked in this tournament. So we have round 1 of the tournament. My opponent didn't show up. So for us, that is pretty much a free win. Unfortunately, I did really want to test this version of the deck, and well, we have like 4 or 5 rounds to go through this, so I will be definitely seeing how this deck holds up for the rest of the tournament. Round 2 for this tournament was against a deck that I didn't expect to be seeing for this, well, tournament, considering we have so many cards and such a wide amount of decks at our disposal, and that is Sky Striker Monarch. I know, I'm as confused as you are, and this deck in round 1, or in game 1 should I say, continued to provide surprise after surprise. Not in a good way, however, just very, very confusing. For the first game, we went through the standard Kashtira Fenrir to Dracosac to Cherubini lines, and then, considering we still had the entire Scareclaw lines to go through, a normal summon Scareclaw Acro, I believe, which doesn't have an effect on normal summon, so the restriction from right, which is really odd, by the way, doesn't apply here, being able to go through the field spell lines and then just go into a hop, skip and a jump to, as MBT would say, a hop, skip and a jump to a well of a lethal for round 1, considering he only ended on Shizuku, and well, being able to pop said Shizuku with the field spell makes things a lot easier for me, and well, making the big towers monsters with a Bakuzuka style effect in the form of Scareclaw Triheart makes dealing with a lot of monsters, even in Sky Striker, a lot easier. Game 2 was something that shot me in the foot a little bit. I decided in to go second, but my opponent opted for me to go first, so this evenly match that I drew in my first hand was completely fucking useless. I decided to go through my standard lines of, well, Brave Engine to the Scareclaw Triheart line, and then my opponent activates Pantheism of the Monarchs. I didn't know what this card does, ironically enough. I should probably fucking know, because I have a lot of friends who used to play Monarchs. I decided to negate it with the one on Griffin Rider. Turns out that the man had the second one anyway, so he drew 2 off of said Pantheism, then drew into Branded Fusion, chaining the Widow Anchor he somehow had in hand, and then just decided to take my Scareclaw Triheart, make Lubellion, shuffle the Albaz and the Dark Magician back, used to summon said Lubellion, make Dragoon, normal summon Albaz, and just kick the shit out of me. And as MBT would say, that all-important game 3 is where things matter. I decided, well, I opted to go first. I went through everything that I literally needed to go through, and then obviously passed it to my opponent. He started with the newly semi-limited Sky Striker Mobilize Engage. I chained Ash Blossom, and unfortunately, that was kind of a big mistake, considering the fact that he just went to battle phase, ended it immediately, and dropped Evenly Matched. And this is where I learned a ruling about how tokens work. If you have a token on your side of the field, regardless of what token it is, under Evenly Matched, you must keep it. because by the rules of the game, you can't banish tokens face down. So that's a little unfortunate for me. So I had to banish literally everything that I had, including an illegal knight, which I was kind of hoping I was going to be able to use because I sided in for it and I searched it instead of searching one in Griffin Rider. So I banished everything face down, and unfortunately, I had to keep going. I had to play past turn 2, sorry. But considering the fact that we had another Scareclaw monster in hand, in addition to extenders in the form of the second field spell that I actually happened to draw in my opening hand, as MBT would say, we had the hop, skip, and a jump to well over lethal with a 39 attack Tri-Heart and, well, multiple attacks from the Scareclaw monsters as well as piercing. And despite all the misplays and illegal plays that I did and my opponent did throughout this entire match, we did take it down pretty convincingly with a 2-1 record. And, well, throughout this entire tournament, after round 2, we are X and O. Well, considering my first opponent didn't show up, I kind of got that one anyway. I did, however, make a note about how this deck kind of struggles on the back foot when dealing with massive monsters like Dragoon. But it's one of those decks that I feel like does incredibly well against mid-range decks, especially with the ones coming out like Sky Striker, Vanquish Soul, Pearly to some extent, and even Super Heavy Samurai. And, well, Tri-Heart is an incredibly good card if you set it up correctly. Now, on to round 3. And for round 3 of this tournament, my opponent also did not show up. This is one of the things with these online tournaments, is that life can very much get in the way when it comes to competing in these rounds. But in the case of round 3, my opponent just never messaged me. I messaged him multiple times, he just flat ignored my messages or didn't see them. So yeah, technically XO still, so yeah, on to round 4. Round 4 was against a deck that I struggle with quite a lot, and that is Branded Despia. For some reason, this deck continues to elude me on how in the ever-loving fuck it continues to do well against any of the decks I happen to play. The only deck it seems that doesn't do well against, in my personal experience, is Earth Machine. But anyway, that's not what this is about. On to the recap of the match. Game 1, well, simply, motherfucker just had everything. I went through my standard combo lines for literally everything that I went to. So the Fenris to Dracosac to Cherubini. I literally went through everything, setting up Tri-Heart, the adventure engine, and as much as I needed to. But this guy opened fucking everything. He opened, thing off the top of my head, he opened Super Poly, Branded Opening, Cross Out, Branded Opening, and something else. Oh, and an Impum, I believe. Whatever it was, motherfucker literally just had everything. He started off with the Super Polys, just taking away my Tri-Heart and my right card that I had left on the field for, well, for some fucking reason, making Mud Dragon of the Swamp. He then went Branded Opening for Baluba. He did the standard Branded combos, and unfortunately, he was just simply able to play through literally everything that I had done for, or I had set up. So yeah, that wasn't it. So we are now already down a game. Game 2, I decided in my infinite wisdom to side my going second card, so like Dark Ruler No Mores, and evenly matched. I saw absolutely none of them in my opening hand, nor in my opening, nor for the rest of the game actually. So I knew that this game was going to be rough. And I had this absolute fucking sinking feeling when I saw him drop Sanctifier Dragon. Like, for fuck's sake, what the hell am I going to do now? But unfortunately, it was one of those things where I thought I was going to get puppet locked. Thankfully, I didn't. But because Branded does fusion something like Pendulum does for Pendulum Summon, gives people fucking aneurysms, it just... Game 2, I decided in my infinite wisdom to try and go second against Branded. It normally seems to work a lot of the time. So I decided all of my board breakers, so Dark Ruler No Mores, evenly matched, and so on and so forth. But I never saw them. Didn't see them in my opening hand, didn't see them throughout the rest of the game. So I knew that this was going to be a rough game if I ever saw one. My heart fucking dropped when I saw my opponent summon the Sanctifier Dragon. I'm like, for fuck's sake, am I going to get gimmick puppet locked? Thankfully I didn't. Jesus Christ, I stuttered over my words there. We didn't get puppet locked, and in a very similar fashion, we managed to outset Sanctifier Dragon and a Finale Dragon in, well, with Tri-Heart and with the rest of the deck. But because fusion summoning in Branded is like doing a pendulum summon in, well, pendulums. It gives people fucking aneurysms. It seems to shit out fusion monsters left, right, and center. So he managed to get out Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, Guardian Chimera, Mirror Jade, literally just to get rid of my entire board and stop me from having follow-up. So yeah, unfortunately, we lost this match 2-0. With the first loss of the tournament, it continues to show me that my lacking track record against Branded will be consistent until the end of time. The deck has always had crazy recursion since the structure deck, and definitely since the new waves of support with stuff like Branded Red, Sanctified Dragon, the new Despia Synchros, Dispater, and so on and so forth. But it's one of those things where I feel like it should actually be hit on the ban list at some point, so maybe like Branded Fusion to 2 or something. But because Kashtira is still the best deck over here, unlike it was in the OCG when they limited Branded Fusion, not much is going to be happening for a while, much to my dismay. But the reason Branded does so well is the ability to fusion summon monsters with a constant resource game is absolutely mental. So being able to fuse from the deck with Branded Fusion, shuffle it back with Rebellion, and then have massive board breaker fusion spells like Super Polymerization and, well, chain blocking motherfuckers with Branded Lost. It's not fun. But yeah, that was round 4 and the first loss of the tournament. We have gone X1. And we are now going into round 5 of this tournament, and we are playing against a deck I haven't played against in a long time in a competitive setting since the ban list, and that is post-ban list Fluwanderies. And game 1 definitely was not a promising start. He decided to go first, as Fluwanderies often does after winning the rock, paper, scissors, and he immediately started his game with Dimension Shifter in the standby phase. So we were definitely going to have our work cut out for us, and unfortunately, considering we didn't open very many hand traps, if any at all to my knowledge, I can't quite remember, we were unable to stop him from getting to M-Pen and eventually just not being able to play as we would like to. And unfortunately, Dimension Shifter against us is a very, very hard deck, or very hard card to play against, considering we need the graveyard for cards like Arrival, Scareclaw, Kashtira, and so on and so forth. So unfortunately, we weren't able to take down game 1 because of said Dimension Shifter. So we're just going to go scoop him up, go straight to game 2. And, well, game 2 is where my knowledge against Fluwandery shines. I have played against the deck too many times to fucking count across multiple different people, multiple different events. So I know that adding is its main thing, and spells are very much needed in the deck. So what did I do? If you guys know the side deck or remember it, I side deck 3 Drawn Lockbird and 3 Anti-Spell Fragrance, of which I both sided in and actually managed to see 1 Anti-Spell Fragrance in our opening hand going first, alongside full combo, including our Adventure Engine. So that's what exactly I did. I went full combo, managed to get Tri-Heart as well as 2 of the Scareclaw monsters that buff it, the field spell, in addition to our full board set up with the Adventure Engine and Anti-Spell in our back row. So, when he managed to normal summon Robina, I instantly negated it with Wandering Griffin Rider. He set 2 and then just instantly scooped him up to game 3, which is where everything lies in the balance. Game 3 is always important in these types of matchups where decks are so dependent on going first or going second. And well, considering my opponent lost, he gets to choose, and he will obviously go first because, well, that's what Fluwanderies does. It has a struggle to break boards, so it makes just a big towers in the form of M-Pen that just constantly negates effects. So I just decided to side in evenly match and keep in the previously sided in draws just in case I happen to draw it. And believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, we managed to draw 1 of the 3 Drawn Lockbirds in the deck. So he normal summoned said Robina, activated his effect to add the normal summon again. So he did said add normal summon Eaglin. I chained obviously said Drawn Lockbird, and we had to get a ruling on it because of how it works, and it turns out that I have to activate Droll after he normal summons Eaglin because it immediately resolves after. So it tells the game to immediately normal summon the next card after. So I'd have to Droll after the effect or the normal summon of the next monster. It was a bit confusing, but because of said Droll, he was not able to get literally anywhere, and because, well, we were going second with full combo, we managed to out the small birds, out everything else, and go for the OTK, which gave us a 2-1 record in this match, ladies and gentlemen. Getting our 4th win is always nice, and especially going from a loss to a win is always nice and always a very, very good accompanying feeling. In addition to this, I very much understand that Fluanderies has a sort of difficult matchup against Scareclaw or against any deck that makes big towers, and because, well, Scareclaw Tryhard is a card that forces things to defense like Baguska, and because it's not activated, it doesn't particularly affect, well, it doesn't particularly get affected by M-Pen, except the fact that it has to try and make sure that it can beat over it very, very easily. And, well, it's one of those things where, in this instance, Droll and Lockbird was the MVP of this game. Because, well, we add quite a lot, and then they add quite a lot, and we have to do it at the correct time. And obviously, Dimension Shifter is not our friend, as we need our graveyard very, very much. However, having 3 Scareclaw monsters, 1 normal summonable, and then 2 to special easily gets us to try hard, and then easily gets us to be able to control the game from there. And as long as we can get rid of the field spell or any card that's problematic with something like Scareclaw Twinsaw, Baron, Wandering Griffin Rider, and so on, we are easily able to play against this deck with no problems whatsoever, unless they open Harpy's Featherstorm like my opponent did in game 1. That card is incredibly stupid and incredibly strong. So, we are now on to round 6 and in the top 4. And because of me saying it previously, we are X1 and in the top 8 for this event. I'm very much understanding that this event isn't always the best to understand the deck's power, because obviously life can get in the way, people can forfeit, people can just give you wins left, right and center. But the matches we have played till the very end as much as we can, and the deck has done incredibly well, even when we have lost against Branded, which, as you guys know me in real life, or even if you know me from previous videos, my track record against Branded is fucking abhorrent. So, being able to go X1 and get into top 8 with this deck is incredibly good for me, and incredibly good for everyone else who plays the deck and decides to watch this video and see how I fared with the deck as someone who decided to pick it up when we now have the proper amount of support of it. So, that's all for just this talking portion. Let's get into the top 8 match. Our top 8 match was against a deck that I have never played against before, and the first deck to utilize one of the new cards that were legal for this format, or this tournament should I say, Revolution Synchron and Field Spell Turbo. Game 1 we lose rock, paper, scissors, and well, my opponent goes first and just passes. There's not a lot that I can do, and there's not a lot that he can do. So at this current precise moment in time, I am unsure of what my opponent is playing. So we decided to go through the standard lines with Scareclaw, and we get Drolled after right car, and well, we just can't particularly do a lot. So it's one of those things where we just kind of had to control the game with Lightheart, which kept getting negated by Ghost Mourner and Moonlit Chill for some reason. He really didn't want me to have that planet, as well as Vista Star Frost, and eventually just continuously poking for 500-1, 500-1. Then when I finally managed to get into some more follow-up in the form of Water Enchantress, there was no point in continuously extending to get more and more on the board, just in case my opponent had Nibiru or whatever. So I just normal summoned the Enchantress and attacked for game, which allowed us to go to game 2. Game 2 is the definition of blindsiding for me, because at this point in time, I have no idea what this guy is playing. So I just decided to leave it as is and go into the match completely blinded and unsided. So my opponent decides to go first this time around and starts by normal summoning Alistair the Invoker. What the fuck format is this? Is this 2020 again? I have too much PTSD from that deck regardless. So I am very confused on what this deck does at the moment, but when I immediately saw Revolution Synchron be instantly used to make Ancient Fairy Dragon, I knew that this deck was going to be a very big problem. So when Ancient Fairy Dragon hit the field, I ashed it, so we were kind of in a better position there. I don't know what field spell he was going to add, most likely Necro Valley, from what I have been told by a couple of friends who have played against this deck and, well, know what it does. But the guy seemed to have extra stuff, so he made he activated the Ethereum field spell to add a Ethereum King Regulus in addition to before special summoning said Regulus, he made a Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, and then, as said, special summon said Regulus by equipping Revolution Synchron from his graveyard, as well as setting a couple of back row, I believe. So, we had to deal with a Crystal Wing and a Regulus negate. So, it's going to be a bit difficult because, well, things can go very, very south very, very quick if we get negated in the wrong manner. So, we didn't overextend as much as we should. We normal summoned right card, activated its effects. It got Regulus negated, I believe, off the top of my head, which is honestly fine. And then we special summoned 2 Scareclaw monsters and then just made Tryhard, which made outing this Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, which is very large and very much fucking in charge of his current board state, a lot easier to deal with because, well, simply put, 3,000 over 2,500 defense, I can easily get over it. And, well, we managed to out said board and continuously go into Tryhard, and then eventually, when the first Tryhard was outed, we just controlled the game with Scareclaw Kashtira because it is just ever so slightly too big to be beaten over by most monsters, and, well, when it attacks directly in defense position, it applies its defense modifier, or defense value, should I say, to the damage calculation. So, eventually, we just continuously managed to get our resources up and up and up, and eventually get to a second Tryhard, which my opponent just couldn't out because he could not get to his engine, and then eventually we just OTK'd him for a 2-0 record against Field Spell Turbo. This is the type of deck I expect to be seeing a lot in Duelist Nexus format, being reliant on Revolution Synchron and Synchro Summoning in general, so decks like Adventurer Synchron, Manadium, and a couple of others will be very much around left, right, and center, especially with the new, obviously, Revolution Synchron and Visus Amatra Synchro. Can't remember what it's called, but Synchro decks are going to be literally everywhere. But the thing I like about this deck is that it just does a lot. But the worst part about it is that it can be very, very bricky if you don't get the correct part in your hand to begin with. So let's say you draw like one of the garnets you're meant to summon later on in the combo. It's very much similar to how Super Heavy Samurai and Pendulum strategies are. They shit out a ton of negates, but they do have very, very big garnets. But we took this down 2-0 pretty convincingly, and we are now in the top 4 of this online tournament. And round 7, the top 4 game for us, was against a deck I have played against a lot post-ban list, but not currently at the moment. And that is post-ban list, but pre-Duelist Nexus Tournament. Game 1 of this match, my opponent was going first, so we definitely had some stuff cut out for us. Well, he started said combo by activating Terraforming to search for the Tailment field spell, then eventually going through his standard combo, ending on a Collider Heart, Rukalos, and a Set Soliek, as well as a unknown card in hand. So we had a couple of things cut out for us in terms of dealing with the board. But top decking an Imperm for turn on said Rukalos was definitely something that we were going to start with. Well, we started by activating said Imperm, targeting the Rukalos, then Terraforming for the Kashtira planet, which added us a Fenrir. Fenrir was then special summoned, and then we activated his effect to search. My opponent activated Soliek, sending the Rukalos, which then special summoned itself back eventually, and unfortunately, because they milled cards, they were able to shuffle back the Fenrir because of the Collider Heart, because a water monster was sent to graveyard. So our Kashtira lines were out of commission, unfortunately, but we still had the Scareclaw line. So I normal summoned one of the level 3 Scareclaw beasts and activated the planet for a right card. Right card we then special summoned and added the Scareclaw arrival, then linked off said level 3 beast into the link one to add a second field spell, just in case I was able to get to Tryhard, and we attempted to activate the arrival, but because the Rukalos did bring itself back, it's considered a new card, it negated it, and unfortunately we could just not get anywhere, so we had to scuba it up. Game 2, I decided to go first and hope to God that I see my anti-spell fragrance. But unfortunately, we did not see said anti-spell fragrance, as well. Tearlament needs its field spell quite a lot more than it used to. But a full combo with Brave Engine, Scareclaw Engine, and even a Baron de Fleur should definitely be able to get through it, right? Well, my opponent started by Foolish Barrel Goods for a Soul, attempted to Foolish Barrel Goods for a Solic. We ashed it. We were like, oh, okay, that's fine. But then our opponent super polyed our Griffin Rider and a Baron de Fleur away, so we're a bit fucked. So he then activated Trigger Karma, which he pitched off of said Super Poly, banishing it to search for the Telements field spell. And, well, that's where we get things a little bit dicey. Our opponent activated Shirin in hand, special summoning itself, milling 3, milling a Kelbeck, which we managed to mill an Enchantress off the top of this Kelbeck, but our opponent didn't mill very well. But he had fucking everything. He activated a Foolish Barrel, milling a Guido, and then milling 1 or 2 names, which eventually managed to get him to a Collider Heart, Rukalos, as well as a Grapha. And, well, because of their playability on our turn, they managed to pop our Tri-Heart with the Telements field spell, and unfortunately, we had lost this entire match 2-0 to Telement. And despite everything in this tournament, all the ups and downs, we were bound to lose and get knocked out at some point. However, I was very, very happy that we had lost against a deck that was not currently meta competitive, or even the best version of the deck that we can make with the cards we had, because we also had Duelist Nexus Legal as well as Age of Overlord, which doesn't come out over here in the TCG for another couple of months. So seeing post ban list but pre Duelist Nexus tier actually do incredibly well is always very, very nice to see. But tier as a deck is incredibly strong still, with its ability to mill like crazy, have bestials, make fusion summoning its bitch, like pendulum summoning, like pendulums do pendulum summoning a lot. But it is crutched a lot by its field spell. If you can get rid of that field spell as soon as you can, then tier does struggle a little bit during the rest of the turn. It still can work its magic by fusion summoning, XC summoning, and linking and all that, but unfortunately it does have a bit of a crutch. But if it does go off, it manages to make a million different negates and a million different interruptions that is actually incredibly hard to still get over, despite everything we now have, like Bestials, Dimension Shifter, and so on and so forth. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of this episode. I thank you for watching this video all the way through. It is very, very long in comparison to the previous video, which was the Maurice's video. Please go check that out. I also really enjoyed making that one as well. But this deck had a lot more going on for it. There was a lot more different ways to play this deck that eventually I will revisit itself when Duelist Nexus is officially legal in about a couple of days, as I'm recording this part of the video, which is on the 25th of July, so in a couple of days or so. But yeah, if you want to see more of this video, or more of these videos should I say, please comment down below any decks you'd like me to play. I do have a couple in mind still for the next couple of episodes of The Source. And if you want to see more videos, please be sure to like and subscribe. I keep stuttering over my words, please send help. That's all from me. Have a good one, stay safe, much love to you all, and happy dueling.
You wipe my tears, manage my emotions, hold me